Good day, Bermuda. I'm Jamila Lodge of the Bermuda Economic Development Corporation, and this is Mind Your Business, the show that brings you the latest information about starting and running a local business in Bermuda. Join us as we discuss the local business issues that are important to you. Joining me today is Ronnie Viera, COO of FAC, and also the chairman of the Cybersecurity Working Group. Welcome, Ronnie.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Yep.
So today we're going to talk a little bit about cybersecurity. And for those that don't know, can you, before we go there, tell me a little bit about yourself and how you came to be the chairman of this working group?
Okay. Well, first of all, the business that we're in, I'm actually CEO of First Atlantic Commerce. Yeah. The business that we're in is in credit card payments. And what got me interested in cybersecurity was years ago is in protecting the card data.
Okay.
So I personally started to get involved in cybersecurity, passed a few exams, et cetera, and then got involved with a few individuals in the community that were also involved in cybersecurity. So we, in terms of the cybersecurity working group, background to that, is that it came out of ECAB, which is the E-Commerce Advisory Board, which set up a subcommittee to look at cybersecurity in Bermuda and see what the state of play was. And out of that, we produced a report which was published at the end of last year.
Okay.
And one of the recommendations of that report is that we move forward to form a working group for the main purpose of, at least the main priority being, to develop a national security strategy for Bermuda.
Got you. Okay, excellent. So you are the right person to be sitting here talking to us.
There's a team of us, but right now I think I can speak well on it.
Well, I thank you for joining us. So for those who are watching, what exactly does cybersecurity mean?
Right. So I think we'd be familiar with physical security,
yes.
Securing our house and property. Cybersecurity is all about protecting our data because data is stored electronically. And there are a lot of aspects to protecting that data, which include physical security. So basically, it's all the requirements around ensuring that that data doesn't get into the wrong hands. So in cybersecurity, there's what's called a triad: confidentiality, integrity, and availability.
Okay.
Confidentiality makes sure that the intent is to ensure that the data is held confidentially, not accessible by unauthorized individuals.
Okay.
Integrity ensures that the data that is held, that it has integrity, that it's accurate, that it's not been manipulated or changed. And then availability makes sure that when you need the data, it's available to you. So if you think of that in a business context, there's no sense having the confidential data, which has integrity, but the users can't use it because for some reason there's some sort of event happening on the network which makes it unavailable. So that's sort of the triad that cybersecurity works around, and there's a lot more to it, obviously, than that. And it encompasses physical security, it encompasses security policies, legislation, etc.
Okay. All right. Well, it seems simple when you describe it like that, but you're an expert, so you get it. But a lot of the people who may own their own business or that we support may still be a little confused or not understand exactly what that entails. Right. So from your standpoint and from your expertise, what are some of the things that businesses can do to try and be more cyber secure?
All right. Sure. That's a good question. So first of all, you want to know what is the data that you need to protect.
Okay.
So some of us refer to that. Where are the crown jewels? What are they and where are they?
Right.
Because that's really what you want to stop from. You want to stop somebody getting access to those. So in a business context in Bermuda, typically that would be customer data.
Right.
Perhaps your own financial data. You wouldn't want anybody getting a hold of that.
Okay.
In a larger business, and even in a smaller business, which is highly competitive, you want to protect your marketing data, your strategy, and your products, your details in your products. So, for instance, if you were an exclusive distributor of a product in Bermuda, and I believe that's how it works, you wouldn't want a competitor getting hold of the contract that you have with that provider, because he could approach that provider and try to get a better contract for distributing in Bermuda. But the core of it is what data do you need to protect? You need to identify that. You want to know where that data is. So if you're using a server in your own shop, your own office, in your own store, you want to make sure that the server is secure. i.e. behind a locked door. You also want to make sure that the environment is conducive to that, otherwise it's air conditioning and humidity and all that stuff. So I won't talk a lot about that, but that's part of it. That goes back to the availability. But you also want to make sure that any access to that server is restricted to yourself or anyone that you have authorized to have access to it, and that the data is, if someone does get access, that they only can get the data they want. So again, using an example, all right, if you have employees that work for you, and if you're not a sole proprietor, you want to make sure that you have access, going back to my contract example, that you're the only one that has access to the contracts with your providers. But you may have a staff member who is selling the goods for you, that they need to have access to customer data and they need to be doing sales. But you definitely don't want them having access to the contract that you have with your providers, because they could go out and set up on their own and take the business away from you. So there's a lot of dynamics to this. But the point is knowing what it is you want to secure, where it is, where is it stored, and what are you doing, putting sufficient controls around it, access to that data. If you can encrypt the data to protect it.
Okay, I mean, that's a good example, and I think, you made it so that the average person can understand it, right? I get it. If it needs if it needs to be secured, use a locked door to secure it. But when you say cybersecurity, is this the new buzzword, or how real is the actual risk that you could lose access or get hacked?
So I will put it this way, it's very real. Now, it depends on where, what type of business you have. So one of the things, cybersecurity is not necessarily a new buzzword. It bounces around. It used to be information security. It's broadened to be cybersecurity because it encompasses a lot of electronic and other data. But essentially, it's a risk management process. So I know to a small business, that may be a term they're not familiar with or they don't use. But to a larger business, it's part of the risk management process. So you want to, that's basically it. I don't know.
No, I mean, I think that's great. That's something I get. Risk management. You want to try and mitigate whatever risk you have, especially when it comes to your customer data and all of that. But in terms of the risk being real, you see stuff on TV and you're like, oh yeah, that's not going to happen to us. We're in Bermuda. But can it?
Sorry. So that's what I meant to address. So in terms of what the risk is to your own business, it depends on what business you're in. So let's just, I'll use an example. So if you're a small restaurant on Reed Street and you take credit cards for payment, you want to make sure that credit card payment process is secure. If you're using a terminal from the bank that the bank has rented to you, typically that's going to be secure, right? Because the banks, obviously, they have a financial interest in making sure it is. If you're using another system to accept that credit card payment, let's say your own point of sale system, you want to make sure you understand the end-to-end security of that transaction data. So the risk to you in that sense is access to the card data, because card data they can be monetized. Card numbers can be sold over the internet. I can tell you right now, there's millions of them. They're available for sale on the internet in dark websites, if you like, where you can pay $6 for them, $30 for them, depending on how recently they've been acquired. So you want to make sure that data is secure. Now, we have already had a local incident where card data was compromised. And you want to avoid that as well as a merchant, because there are fines associated with that. So Visa and MasterCard, the primary cards used here, they apply fines for any card data that's lost. And you want to avoid those. They're very expensive. But so that's sort of in a small restaurant environment. So the risk to you is card data. If you're a larger company, and let's just go right up the scale, you're a bank. The risks are much higher, and therefore on a global scale, you're much more exposed than the small restaurant down on Reed Street. And so your risk management profile and your risk management processes are going to be a lot more robust. And I suspect that at the banks they are very robust. So it just depends on where you are in that scale. So I've drawn, there are two very wide ends of the scale. But if you're in between there, you need to figure out where you are. Now, there is one important point. In Bermuda, the privacy legislation, which was passed 2 years ago, or a year and a half ago, goes active next year. Now, once that goes active, there are going to be quite heavy fines associated with customer data loss. And that affects everybody that stores customer data.
Right.
So I go back to the restaurant example now. The risk may not be from outside world necessarily, it could be locally, but my point is you want to make sure that if you are storing sensitive personal data, that is secured. Because the locally now in Bermuda, there will be compliance requirements, and there will be penalties associated with any data loss, so, if it happens to you.
So, I mean, that's good. And I guess it speaks to the fact that there is a working group around cybersecurity. There is law now. What is it? Piper?
Who's talking about it today, but Piper has...
which will come into effect to help to kind of govern and regulate the storing of people's personal information.
Yeah.
So I guess from a holistic point of view, Bermuda in general is readying themselves and creating processes and laws in place to be better cyber secure.
Yes.
And for the purpose of this show, I'm trying to encourage, those who are watching who own businesses that, okay, yeah, let's join the getting ready process, right? Make sure that they have their risk management policies in place, despite how small or how large you have to be. You want to get ready because we're getting ready as well. Are there any tips? I know we could talk forever about this, I'm sure. You guys, there was a all-day workshop that was held, and that was very informative. It was certainly enlightening to me about the types of things that businesses need to be considering. So quickly, are there any things that you can say to a business that they should be considering if they cybersecurity wasn't even on their radar?
Yeah, the workshop that you referred to, it was held in September.
Yeah.
It was educating people that attended on the Nist Framework. Nist is, I don't want to take a guess at the acronym at the moment, but it's a U.S. National Standards Organization. And they proposed a framework, or have released a framework, that people can use to apply in their business to address cybersecurity controls in their own business. So, it's probably not going to be appropriate for a small business necessarily.
Right.
But medium to larger business in Bermuda, it's a good thing to look at. But going back to the point I made earlier, though, from a small business perspective, as I said, you just want to make sure you know where your data is, who's managing the data. A lot of companies in Bermuda hire someone to do that. They may hire a local consulting firm to do that. So you want to ask some fairly challenging questions of your vendor in terms of where that data is, how it's secured, who has access to it. That's where I would start if I was a business.
Okay.
And then you referred to the Cybersecurity Working Group. So PIPA deals with personal data, and that's a legislative requirement, and that's going to be compliance. I mentioned it's regulated and there'll be penalties. The Cybersecurity Working Group is dealing with the broader issue of cybersecurity in Bermuda. So the first task, as I mentioned earlier, is developing a national cybersecurity strategy for the island.
Right.
And right now what we're doing, we developed 4 draft goals.
Okay.
And we're engaging in stakeholder consultation across particularly the business community on input into those goals and input into the broader strategy. So that's where we are at the moment on that.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for sharing that. We are going to get a chance to talk to a provider at the break, and so I'll ask her a little bit more about the specifics about businesses and what they can do. But it's good to hear that on a whole, Bermuda is preparing itself and readying itself. So I really appreciate you for coming out and sharing with us.
Today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back with Mind Your Business.
How do you get inspired? Join BEDC on Mind Your Business to find out how entrepreneurs get inspired to start up their businesses whether online or brick and mortar. Be part of the startup movement that can help you to start up the next great business idea. Tune in weekly to Mind Your Business, because if you don't, who will?
Welcome back to Mind Your Business. I'm your host, Jamila Lodge, and joining me now in the studio is Carolyn Rance. She is owner of Rance Consulting and also a member of the Cybersecurity Working Group and chair of the Awareness Committee. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us. So we did get a chance to talk to Ronnie Viera earlier. He's the chair of that Cybersecurity Working Group, but I wanted to talk to you a little bit about exactly and more specifically about what businesses can do to be cyber secure. Before we do that, though, can you give us a little bit about yourself and tell us your professional background?
Yeah, so my background is actually in business administration.
Okay.
And in the early 90s, I moved into IT, doing providing training, network support. I was head of the help desk for Citibank European-wide, and then moved on to project management for them on a global project, and got into IT. It's very challenging and enjoyable. I did my project management professional when I worked for a large insurance company here in Bermuda in my early days, and never looked back.
Okay. Now, it's rare that you find women in the technology and IT industry. So what drove you to even consider that as a career?
Well, for one, it was challenging. It's never a dull moment. You never know what happens today.
Right.
And it kind of fits with my lifestyle. I like to try new things.
Right.
And cybersecurity, IT is one of those areas, but also you need to be very disciplined to be successful. So project management, change management is a vital part of this work.
Okay.
And risk management, of course.
Okay. And it sounds like you enjoy doing that kind of stuff.
I do, yes,
Okay.
I do.
So you've taken that, you work for companies. Why did you decide to start your own company?
Well, I had my own company in Germany as well.
Okay.
Yes. And how that happened was very far back in the early days of PCs, floppy in, floppy out. Some of us will remember.
Some of us will remember that. Others will be like, what are you talking about? Okay.
Exactly. And I had to actually teach software application in our company. And that's when I knew if I ever go out on my own, that's what I want to do. I want to help people be more effective in their work with the computers. And so when I finished work here, I was the head of IT for corporate-wide for a large utility in Bermuda. Okay. I decided now is the time to start this on my own.
Excellent and perfect timing. Because we're talking about cybersecurity, and I really, whereas you have the expertise, Ronnie has the expertise, and it just makes sense. I think there are a lot of people out there who don't quite know exactly what that means and what's required. So thankfully, we have someone like yourself who is available to assist those business owners who may not really understand what's required. So from your standpoint, why do you think cybersecurity is important?
Well, for one, you need to keep your data secure, as Ronnie mentioned earlier. But you also need to keep your devices at home secure.
Right.
So you've heard of these webcams being hacked, and people can watch whatever movement you have in your house. They can watch your children, etc. The smart
Very
TVs.
unsettling. Yeah.
It's very unsettling, and so it's very important that we spread the word, and also not talk in IT terms, but rather in normal words that we all understand.
Yes.
When you remember in the early days, in the early days of the internet, we were concerned about the little teenager who would hack in the garage or in his room at home and put a link on a website. And that then evolved into the scams that we saw about the Prince of Nigeria, but also the Microsoft calls, which are still going around.
Yeah.
Microsoft will never call you. So that call will always be fake.
Right.
And as an end user or individual who doesn't work, we need to understand that.
Right.
And the best thing is to just hang up.
Right.
And then it evolved. So today's hackers are sophisticated. They are employees on a payroll. They have benefits.
That's crazy. Like what?
Yes. They have professional titles.
Yeah.
They advertise their business. If you go on YouTube, you can find advertisement for hacking your competitors' information.
Wow.
And we see it, like 2016 in Bermuda, we decided to call it the year of ransomware.
Yeah.
There have been so many ransomware attacks. And that is mainly due to the fact that people don't know anything about all this technology and how you can hack, and they've never heard these terms. So it's on us to spread the word and make sure that people are aware what is a legitimate email and what is a scam email, and how do I detect the difference, right?
Right.
And that's basically what I've put in place in this utility, we have very strong awareness program, and that is your biggest challenge, is to have the human resources in your company aware of all the differences and nuances.
Yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense, because I think part of it is just understanding and knowing what to look for, right?
Exactly.
So,
Yes.
I mean, as a business owner, in my mind, I might have some ideas, or I might think, oh, this could never happen to me. But when it does happen, you're in a situation where you no longer have access to your information. And we're talking about ransomware now. Yeah. And to get it back, you have to pay somebody. Yes. To unlock or give you access again. So I do think what you said is important about just educating people. So from your standpoint, as a consultant working with business owners, what are some of the things that you tell them, or that you try and get them to implement to try and prepare themselves for things like this?
Yeah, so very dear to me is that we all keep our hard and software up to date. So hardware has firmware that you have to keep up to date. There's software. You have your antivirus program. You have your anti-spyware program, your anti-malware program, your ransom. And it goes on, right?
Yes.
But if you don't keep those up to date, you're vulnerable,
right?
And that's exactly what we want to avoid, right? Make sure that when you buy devices, that you check on the internet, do I have the latest update? When you have, for example, an Android or an iPhone, you get these
all
patches. Well, install them immediately.
You know what? And people are like, don't do it first because there's always bugs. Wait, it's going to break your machine. Don't do it. But you're saying do it.
You're right. I say do it. And what you need to do is, though, that comes to my second point, is backing up your data. So before I update or apply a patch, they call it a patch, these security updates, I actually back up my data first. And everyone can do it. You buy yourself a small little backup tool, and you plug it in, and it does everything automatically for you. You can have help setting it up. Some people are very snazzy and they can do it themselves. Yeah. But the biggest thing is really to back up your data, because if you do have a ransomware attack, you actually might not have to pay the ransomware if you have your backups.
See that?
All you need is someone to eliminate the ransomware on your backup.
On your other machine.
Having said that, the backups, though, if you don't try to restore from a backup, if you're a small business, I'm talking small business right now.
Thank you.
So you have a backup that you do every day, and you might store it offsite, which is phenomenal, but you also need to try to restore from your backup from time to time to make sure that in the case of an event, it really will work.
That's a good point, because you don't think that, right? You're like, oh no, it's backed up, but you want to make sure that you can actually retrieve that information that's backed up.
Correct.
Those are good
Because
tips.
they use tools, and as an individual, all you need is an external hard disk, and you can move your pictures and your documents over to that external hard disk, and you have your information secure there.
Okay.
So it's a little different between an individual and a business.
And a business.
Yeah.
But I think the overarching factor is that, yes, cybersecurity is a real thing.
Absolutely.
It is here to stay. And for those who may not have even considered it or even thought about it, they should. Yes. Now, I know I would love to continue. I wish I had more time, but I don't. So before I go, do you want to maybe share with those who are watching any tips that they could actually use to try and ready themselves, for lack of a better word, before they call someone like yourself?
Yeah. So for one, I'd like people to become more cyber aware.
Okay.
And one way to do that is go on cybertips.bm.
Okay.
There's also a Facebook page. We have information out there. We release little videos, short videos, just on one subject. For example, strong password.
Okay.
Which leads me to that. Use strong passwords. Don't use your family name, etc.
But I won't remember.
You will. There are strategies, and we've put it on Facebook.
Okay.
So have a look at those videos, and there are more to come. And then the other thing is use a secure internet line. Remember the Wi-Fi free Wi-Fi is fantastic, especially when I travel, when I'm in a mall, etc., etc. But remember, it's a Wi-Fi, so any information that you receive on your device and that you send on your device, emails, websites, passwords, usernames, that is all sent to this one router that is your Wi-Fi, but it's also sent to everyone else.
That's
and if
on it.
everyone else that's on that Wi-Fi. So you just need one person who has the right software and the wrong intentions.
Oh no.
And your data is compromised.
Okay. So what are you saying? Don't use free Wi-Fi?
Don't use free Wi-Fi if you don't have to.
Okay.
There are things that you can do, and I will create a little video clip on that as well.
Okay.
To protect yourself a little bit more when you are on a free Wi-Fi.
Okay. That would help.
The other thing is backups.
Yes.
Backups. Please do that. And patch your systems.
Okay.
And attend a training session somewhere. There's a lot of free information on YouTube, and you can also contact us. We're the Bermuda Cybersecurity Working Group and Cyber Tips. We're all happy to help out. We do sessions.
Okay. Well, you know what, that little bit of information has been great. And I think for those who are watching, it's certainly, you provided some tools that we can all do, right? And can understand. And I definitely appreciate that. And the fact that there is a resource that can, that people can use. You can go to cybertips.bm and get more information and follow up with you. So thank you so much, Caroline, for your time and for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Thank you for joining us today on Mind Your Business. If you have questions, contact the BEDC at 292-5570 or email us at info@bedc.bm. And remember, if you don't mind your business, who will?